Good morning, everyone. How are you? I am just sitting out on the deck, about to continue to do some writing this morning, and I wanted to come on and talk about judgment. And this was kind of one of you know, the key things that I reflected upon while I was away. Um, and so I want to share kind of my reflection and what I learned about myself, because I think it can be helpful for anyone that's watching. So I just came back from an amazing visit with my family. My family lives in a place called Sioux Lookout in northwestern Ontario. And there's usually a lot of you Sioux Lookouters watching. It's an absolutely beautiful place, and I grew up there, and my parents are there, and my brothers are there, and my nieces are there, and it it's it's a magical place. It's in the summer it's absolutely gorgeous, and so it's one of my favorite places to go in the summertime because I get to go to my parents' camp, and I spent many a summers as a child out there. And, I love the ability to give that experience to my daughter to, you know, play in the water and build forts and run around with her cousins and, have bonfires and marshmallows and just be a little redneck kid, and really make memories with her cousins, specifically my niece. So it was an amazing visit. And it was the best visit I've ever had with my family. I only see my family once a year because I've always lived quite far away, and this is by far the closest that I've lived. And so it was about a 14-hour drive. Um, but it was the best visit because of basically how my mindset has changed and how much I've evolved as a person. And that's kind of what I want to talk about, is that what I learned with this visit, it was the best visit that I've ever had, not because there was any change in my family's behavior or my interactions with them. It was the best visit ever because of my perception and my mindset. So I think I think a commonality that all of us have is that we all have family drama. We all do, right? Families are complex beings. We're family, but we're all individuals that are all very different. And, we're family because we have a bloodline, but we can all have a lot of differences. And when we have differences, sometimes it's difficult to see the commonality. And so I grew up really telling myself that I was a black sheep, that I am a little different, and I am different than my family. My dad likes to joke and say he wants a blood test because he doesn't know where I came from, because I don't smoke, I don't drink, I'm a bit square. I am the educated one. And so my brothers would say, I'm the smartest, stupidest person that they've ever met. And so I really felt like I didn't belong. And so it's interesting how when we create that false advertising in our brain, how it really kind of pulls us away from our families, right? It creates a bit of distance. And part of that distance, it feeded my ego in my head to say that I was unworthy, right? To say that, I was, unlovable, and perpetuated that poor self-esteem. And so what I realized is how, because I've done so much change in my mindset, and in feeling really calm and confident and centered in who I am, and really owning who I am, and not feeling like I need to be anything other than who I am, and living really authentically and really being comfortable in who I am, that changed my presence with my family. because I didn't feel when I was there like I was lacking anything or that I had to overcompensate. Because before, I always felt like I had to kind of overcompensate in ways like, I was worried that I would be perceived as as judgmental or, too, prim and proper and so I was always kind of feeling like I was on edge because I might be judged, right? And not that my parents or my family judge me. Certainly my brothers poke fun at me, but that's, brotherly love. But I took that poking fun really quite personally, right? Because I was so oversensitive. But what I learned in this visit is that, with having that negative perception of myself, I also had a level of judgment about my family that was completely unconscious, right? I judged their drinking. So I come from a family who loves to have a good time. And because I don't drink at all, my perception of that is that it's, it's excessive. And it was always really difficult for me to be around. I think it's difficult when you don't drink at all and you're the sober one and you're around people that are inebriated. I mean, that kind of wears thin. But what I didn't realize is how much judgment I had. Because when I go home, generally it's for some sort of an occasion. And so, it is a big party. And that's not necessarily reflective of their everyday lives. But that's the snippet that I see. And so without realizing it, I think I judged them to say that, and this is hard for me to admit, because I have always, prided myself as being somebody who is very, welcoming and accepting and very inclusive. But I think the message is that we all have hidden judgment of others, which affects our relationships. And we really have to look deep inside ourselves, turn the mirror around, look to see how that affects our relationships. Because I think most often when we have difficult relationships, we always want to kind of place the blame or point the finger at the other person. But the reality is we only have control over ourselves. And I've said this many times in a lot of my videos. And so, I think what I realized is that because I'm so confident in who I am, my ego no longer needs to judge others to make me feel better. I think that when we are not confident in who we are, when we have, low self-worth, self-esteem, our ego wants to keep us there. It wants to keep us small. And so unconsciously we, judge others to make ourselves feel better. And, that's icky, right? That's not something that feels good to really acknowledge or accept, because, I think we love our families unconditionally. And I love where I came from. I love, in previous videos, I said, basically, I have to love where I came from in order to respect where I am now, because it's made me who I am. So what I learned is that, for all of those years where I found going home, I was super excited, but by the time I got there, I found it really stressful and unsettling. It was because there was this level of judgment there. And so when we release that judgment and kind of love unconditionally and hold space for people for where they're at in their lives, it makes our connections with people so much better, right? And it's not to say, I think that people who have tumultuous relationships with their family, it's not to say that you're accepting anybody's behavior. It's just you're detaching, right? It's a lovingly detachment, right? It's a separation of being present with people, accepting them where they're at without expectation, right? Because I think the other thing that which disappoints us, is that sometimes we project our own expectations on other people, and then they fall short and we're upset with them. But we held them at a standard that they were unable to provide, and that's unfair. So, yeah, so judgment. So, I ask you all to kind of reflect on, do you have relationships where there may be judgment there? Are you willing to turn the mirror and really look into yourself, into your darkest places, and acknowledge that we're imperfect? And, you know, is there judgment there that's affecting your relationships? So that was a really hard thing to talk about for me, because, it brings up shame and guilt, right? But you know what? I'm just so thankful that I had such a great time with my family, and that it was a really nice reminder and a reflection of how far I've come, on this journey. And yeah. So, anyways, have a wonderful day. I'm off to do some writing before the rest of my family gets up. And yeah, happy Sunday. And I will talk to you this week. Bye.